This movie changed cinema. But how does a samurai film from 1954 end up inspiring Star Wars? Well, I have three main reasons, including a few more things at the end that I think Mr. Lucas could take and make their movies better. Seven Samurai is exactly what you think it is. A movie about 7 whole samurai. Who would have thought? Which brings me to the first thing to point out as inspiration. This and A New Hope have fairly similar openings. A few people from a small community go looking for help to fight against seemingly overwhelming odds. They team up with an old, wise swordsman and recruit other reluctant heroes to their cause. I can hear what you're saying though. If it's so simple, how in God's name is Seven Samurai 3.5 hours long? You know what you could do with that time? Build a Lego set. You can watch the Bionicle movie twice. You can cook 1/4 of a Thanksgiving turkey. This is a big, dense, character-oriented story that prioritizes relationships over storytelling. But don't get me wrong, the storytelling is really good here too. Pizza for Dave? I love how Kurosawa tells us about his characters through their actions, which leads us to point number 2. Every character introduction seems to have an insight into the characters themselves. What's more interesting, this?
He gets a translator, be sure it speaks Bocce.
Doesn't look like we have much of a choice, but I'll remind him.
Or this?
Wait. Show what you do.
This is our first samurai that people recruit. This older Ronin man. We meet him as he's shaving his head and asking for monk robes. This may be a bit confusing, but Kurosawa trusts the audience to catch up as the scene progresses. It's a classic jumping into a scene late and getting out early. All we know at this point is that these people need a samurai, and this one is shaving his head for some reason. He could be an interesting candidate, so let's watch to see what he does to find out. Turns out a child has been held hostage, and the samurai's plan to get close to him is under the disguise of a monk. The audience immediately understands, damn, this guy is a smart strategist, has no ego, and might be the perfect get for this village. Now let's quickly look at this sequence with Luke and Obi-Wan. The context is a bit different here. An old seasoned warrior being looked for specifically because he can help a rebel cause. Oh. Wait, maybe not that different. This scene in the cantina bar is George nicely blending 2 samurai moments into one. Seven Samurai has this epic standoff where a man overestimates himself and gets killed one-on-one. In A New Hope, Obi-Wan cuts off this guy's hand for similar reasons. Both show the skill and importance of the character to the story. The film takes its time with these samurai because it understands the importance of setting them up so the audience can take them seriously. Can you imagine how boring it would be if these guys just went up to random samurai and recruited them with money?
After our business is concluded, what then?
There'll still be a lot of men after your hide.
And that should give me comfort.
Should. I won't be one of them.
However, there is one samurai that you really can't take seriously, and oddly enough, he's like the best guy in the movie. This is Kujiro, or whatever. He's set up like the village idiot who is constantly making a fool out of himself. He seems fascinated by the veteran Ronin, but is unable to put it into words, so he just kind of follows him around. Feels a little similar to Han Solo, rough upbringing, unswayed by mumbo-jumbo of sword fighters, and mostly out for himself until he realizes that he's fighting for something greater. It might be a bit of a reach since these two are dramatically different personalities, but I think it kind of works, especially because of the turn that these characters take. But what makes this character so interesting is the peeling away of the front he puts up for others. This is one area I wish George took more inspiration from. Seven Samurai, though, brilliantly withholds information between characters. You only get to know them through their actions or through sudden outbursts of emotion, much like real people. It can take a lot of time to truly get to know someone. We typically don't let our walls down until we actually trust people, and that can take a lot of time. And fortunately, this film does take that time to let you get to know these characters, their fears, their struggle, and what they want. Unfortunately, I think George Lucas has always painted with a fairly broad stroke.
It's only one more season.
Yeah, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank left.
Where are you going?
Looks like I'm going nowhere. I have to go finish cleaning those droids.
Oh, and he can't stay here forever. Most of his friends have gone.
This brings us to the final thing that inspired George Lucas. Innovation. The technical achievements in Seven Samurai are astounding. Every single frame is meticulously designed and gorgeous to look at. This is probably because everything was done practically. I mean, just look at this scene from the movie. The sets, the locations, the props, everything had to feel real. So it was. He also pushed the boundaries with the camera, employing multiple cameras at once to capture the full majesty of a scene. Something not done on this scale before. You can say what you want about the special films or his later additions, but George, with the original Star Wars, has some of these elements. Grand locations, cool sets, interesting concepts, neat props. Where George decided to push things later in his career, unfortunately, was through the visual effects, and we all know how that turned out. What I love about Seven Samurai most, which is unfortunately missing from Star Wars, and that's the stakes. We really get to know the characters here, so when they're put against 40 armed bandits, we know most aren't coming out alive. When somebody inevitably falls, I just can't help but feel like I wish it was somebody else, even though I would probably feel the same if it was somebody else. I love its ability to make the victory for them feel like a heartbreaking loss. Yes, they drove back the bandits. Yes, they saved the village. Yes, the village is grateful. But is the price paid worth it? Obviously, Star Wars isn't leaving audiences with these kinds of questions. It opts for a shorter running time and a tighter good versus bad narrative, and that appeals to more people. So that's totally understandable. This isn't a one-to-one comparison. Seven Samurai and Star Wars A New Hope are not the same movies, but you can see the influences clearly on George Lucas. If you want to watch a breakdown of another film that's hugely influential, watch this video and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss next week's episode on Audition.